What's up, YouTube? Poor.Mans.Podcast back with another video. Give me the HBO special. That's a Help a Brother Out special. Hit the like and the subscribe button for more content. Let's get right into the video.
Nicola Wakefield Evans has spent decades advocating gender diversity. The Lendlease board member is part of a global movement to get companies to have at least 30% women on their boards.
There's economic advantages for having proper diversity in our organisations, and that's right across, that's starting from our political organisations, our governments and our corporates, our not-for-profits.
She says Australia has a cultural problem that sees women in leadership and other walks of life treated poorly.
The way that Christine Holgate was treated as the CEO of Australia Post, I don't think the Prime Minister and his team would have treated a man in that role the same way that they treated Christine.
I think it will be up to business to show the way and give women a fair go at leadership jobs.
On the ASX...
Hey, wait, one second. Just hear me out, because I'm not the smartest guy, right? I am literally IQ level. I'm right on the line of being a chimp. Like, I'm right on that line of, I'm not the smartest, but just hear me out. Hear me out for a second. Maybe Christine is an asshole. Right? Like, has anybody ever... Maybe she doesn't do that good of a job. Maybe. I don't know. And maybe when you teach women that every time they fail in life, it's because a man hates them, maybe instead of actually changing their character flaws and being a person that people actually like and want to be around, they just attribute every failure of their life to the fact that, well, it's because everybody hates me because I'm a woman. Maybe that's what... I know a guy in here. I know a guy that wants to be a rapper, right? He goes and does these shows. He calls them shows. They're not very much... They're more like group meetings. There's 15 people in the audience, and he'll go on the stage and he'll do a show, and then and when the audience doesn't respond how he wants them to, he just goes, "You're a horrible audience," right? But most of the time, nobody likes his music, and he doesn't understand that. Maybe I should change my music. Maybe I should change my delivery. Maybe I should change my flow. He never wants to change because he always attributes all of his failures to the audience. Maybe that's what happens when you teach people that every time they fail in life, it's not because of themselves. It's not because they need to change. It's not because they need to be more likable. It's only because of your sex. Every time. And so you had this lady that's coming on TV and she's just, oh, well, maybe every time a woman gets fired, it's because of her sex. Well, maybe she wasn't doing her job good enough. I don't know very many people that get fired because they're a woman or because they're black or because they're short or because they're ugly. But I do know a lot of people that get fired because they're not consistent, because they don't do their job well, because nobody likes them, because they don't try to make people like them. They don't give an effort to be bubbly. They don't give an effort to be nice. They don't do that because they think that they deserve something, because they think they're more competent than they actually are. And anytime these people fail, they blame it on something that they can't change, and it's just very convenient for them because they never have to change, and they keep getting the same result and they don't understand why.
ASX 200, there are still 82 boards with less than 30% women. Only 21 companies have a female chair and only 10 women are chief executives. On average, male employees earn $25,000 a year more than women, and 45% of employers who undertook a gender pay gap analysis haven't done anything to fix it.
Maybe 45% of employers never did anything about the wage gap because they looked into it and found out that it wasn't real, because it isn't real. And I'm happy Jordan Peterson said what he said when he was talking about the bricklayers. He said 99% of all bricklayers are men. When we talk about equality in positions, we only talk about CEO positions. How convenient. Why aren't we talking about the bricklayers? We need more representation in female bricklayers. And I completely agree with them. And it's because you want a slave class. You want yourself and you want people that look like you. In this chance, in Nazi Germany, it was people that had blonde hair and blue eyes. In this particular instance, it happens to be women. But you want yourself and people that look like you to have representation at the top while not having to do any of the hard jobs, the responsible jobs that are necessary to keep the country afloat, that are necessary to make sure the country sustains its infrastructure. You don't want to do any of those responsible jobs, but you just want the jobs at the top that are nice and cushy and that get all the respect. If this was truly about equality, we would want more representation in those positions. Why don't we have more representation in those hard jobs?
Right through the economy, we see this power imbalance where men have dominant positions in leadership and in terms of remuneration.
Oh, what about homelessness,
there needs to be
suicide,
a culture of change.
In 2016, the boss of Australian Super, Ian Silk, wrote to 17 companies because they had no women on their boards. Now there's just one.
When directors come up for election and shareholders have the opportunity to cast a vote, increasingly they're looking at issues such as diversity.
Ming Long sits on several company boards. She says male leaders treat gender targets as a tick-the-box exercise, but there should be financial consequences when companies fail to act.
The quickest way I've been able to see accountability applied is through a bonus system, by ensuring that people have targets as part of their short-term and long-term incentives.
Targets, UN Special Advisor Elizabeth Broderick says should be championed by men.
Lack of women at the top is one of the reasons we have sexual harassment in such a pervasive form in Australia today.
She wants to see companies put an end to non-disclosure agreements that bury stories of sexual harassment.
Give women the ability to tell their own story in their own words at a time of their own choosing.
It's taken decades for women to climb the corporate ladder. And while 30% targets for boards are a minimum, it's not gender parity. A number of organisations are now setting higher targets in a bid to achieve more equal numbers of men and women.
There's always going to be people who are not ready for quotas. But if we can't get to a position where we have a really good number of both men and women on boards, then I think that we have to think about how we move the dial. And if that's quotas, then so be it.
The head of a group of super funds holding more than $1 trillion worth of investments in companies wants at least 40% women on boards by 2025.
We've written to companies and asked them to tell us what their pathway is to get to that position.
A position that's become harder to reach because of the pandemic.
If I was one of these companies, I would just do an expert level troll. I would just tell some of the men to identify as women. We hit our 30% quota because they identify as women. Steve, Jeff, Juan, Tyrone, whoever it is. And I said Jeff because that's supposed to be the Asian guy. You know, sometimes Asian dudes will move over here and they'll have American names. It's a little weird. It's kind of funny. But you got to make fun of it. But what I'm trying to say is I would just tell some of those dudes to identify as women, and then that would be towards the quota. And do you see the little trick that they're trying to use? Oh, well, there's more harassment in these workplace environments because there's not enough female representation. So what we need to do is force 30% of these men to quit their jobs so that women can come in and take their jobs, and that's going to decrease the quote-unquote harassment. Here's the thing. Harassment is anything nowadays. Flirting is harassment technically. So when it comes to powerful positions, when you have powerful men and powerful women working together for 8 hours a day, there's going to be a little bit of flirting. And so harassment is basically just who reports the flirting first. Is the guy handsome? Well, then it's just flirting. Is he a little ugly? He doesn't really have the position that I want him to have. Then it's harassment, right? So so they're trying to weasel their way in by trying to convince the population that there's this atrocious amount of harassment going on at the top levels. Now, if it's the R word, if men are holding women down and taking advantage of them, obviously no one supports that. Those people should be locked under the jail. We all agree with that. And if there is a woman that is competent enough to do the job and she's competitive enough to get the job through applying for that job and going to the interviews, then she deserves that job. But you can't just tell companies that they have to bring in 30%, fire 30% of the men, and then bring in 30% women to make it more equal. No, that's not equal, and it's by no standard fair. If you're competent enough to get the job, that's the person that deserves the job. 50% of the entire world is women, but harassment still happens. So if you get 30% representation in top CEO positions or top corporate positions, that's not going to prevent harassment. That's just not how that works. What you want is a slave class. You want men to have to do all the hard jobs while you sit at the top and just make all the decisions that are only going to benefit the people that look like you. Because if you were making decisions that benefited everybody, you would want equal representation in those positions. You would be talking about men being homeless. You would talking about men wanting to end themselves more often than women. You would talk about men being more military deaths. You would talk about men being majority of workplace deaths. You would talk about all of those things if you actually cared about a narrative that was actually equal. But that's not what you care about. You want a slave class. And I hope you get it. You know why I hope you get it? Because there are so many men that know the truth, but they are scared to say anything. They're scared because they don't want to get canceled. They're scared because they want to sleep with this girl. They're scared because they don't want their girlfriend to leave them. And if you don't speak up for what is right, you're a coward, and you deserve everything that comes with that. Till next time.
My boo, I'm just here for the rendezvous. And I came to hold damn groove, cause I've been feeling like you want me to. You say stop saying I'm so I can't help myself when I poke up.